Hi everyone, it's Ellen from Classroom Unbound, and today I wanted to share with you what we have been reading this month. So this month we have gotten through some great books. I don't know, for me personally, I have just been hitting the book lottery, and every book that I've started this month has been great, and I have loved it, and I hope to continue on that path. I know that's not always possible, but if I can, that would be amazing. So I want to start sharing again. I did in the spring, I shared the books that we read every month, or at least that I read every month, but I want to start that again this fall. So I'll start with September. I'm going to share the books that I read, the books that we read aloud for homeschool, and then also I'll share what my oldest has read, and then as soon as my middle son starts getting into chapter books, then I will share what he reads as well. So for our read alouds this month, we read Trumpet of the Swan, and then we also did watch the movie. It wasn't as good as the book, but we loved Trumpet of the Swan. So we started off with that at the end of August, and it was a really cute story, and we enjoyed it. And my favorite was reading Lewis's dad, because I thought that he was just amazingly funny. My oldest really loved Lewis, the character of Lewis, and thought that he enjoyed how he persevered through not being able to communicate and talk, and falling in love with I forgot her name, but the other swan, but still finding a way to communicate with her. My 6-year-old and my 4-year-old loved Lewis's dad. They just thought that he was hilarious. So that was our read aloud that we got through this month. We are also still working on Harry Potter 5. I don't know why we're going through this book slowly. It's, well, obviously it's a thick book. I think it has like 700 or 800 pages. But I find that this book, more so than the previous 4 books, there's a lot of vocabulary and instances that I have to explain in the book. So I always have to take a moment to kind of, I read something and then they have questions, so I have to sit back and like, okay, well in England they say this, or that really means this, or, you know, like if I read a statement, something like, oh, he was a nutcase. They don't quite understand those yet. So I'm having to pause a lot, and that's why I think that's why it's taking us so long to get through it. But we're almost on page like 300. So we will finish it at some point. My goal is to finish it in October. So we're still reading through Harry Potter 5, and we'll finish that up for next month, and then I'll share with you our thoughts at the end of next month on that. So for this first 4 weeks of school, my son has read 4 books, and I don't read his books first. I just allow him to choose a book and read it, or if I see something that has kind of stuck out to me, or if I find on someone's blog or another person's YouTube channel, if they have a book that their child has read that I think might be of interest to him, I share it with him. But for the most part, whatever he wants to read aloud, I just let him read aloud. So the 4 books that he went through, he read The Fire Within by Krista Lacey, and it's about a dragon, and he likes to write, I think my son says. So we have like loose conversations. I ask him what it's about. We're still working on our narration, so retelling an entire book at a time is not good for him to retell, but if I ask him every few days what's been going on, he's able to retell a little bit more. So for instance, if I just let him read an entire book and I'll say what it's about, he'll say, I don't know. So, and I'll ask him like, well, is it about princesses and ballerinas? And he'll be like, no, it's about a dragon and he goes into the castle or what have you. So I have to give him very specific questions for him to be able to answer. So I'll say like, who is the main character? Did he have any friends? Did he have any enemies? And through that, I can understand what the book is about. But if I just say, tell me about the book, he says, I don't know. So we're working on that, and I find that questions really help. The second book he read was The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. He read that one and The Wild Robot Escapes, so that's the sequel to the book, and he really enjoyed both of those. He read those very quickly. And it's like nature meets machine type of book. And I know it takes place, the main character is like Roz, and she's a robot and somehow gets to an island and has interactions with bears. And I remember my son saying that the bears were really sarcastic, is what he said. But so those are the next 2 books that he read, and then the last book he read was The Last Kids on Earth, and I actually wasn't able to talk to him about that book yet. But I think that was a really quick read for him too. He finished it in about a day. So I was not able to talk to him about that one yet. But those are the books that he has read. So over the past 6 weeks, I've read 5 books, and they have been some great reads that I have just been finding. And I'm excited about having these great books back to back and have been loving them. And hopefully I continue on this spree. I don't know if it'll happen, but I'm really happy with the books that I've read over the past 6 weeks. One of the books that I started reading, I think like mid-August, I'm still gonna share because it was homeschool related, and it was kind of my getting back into homeschool motivation book. A friend suggested it, so I read it, and the book is called Teaching from Rest by Sarah Mackenzie. And so at first I thought from the title it was just a book on like how to chill in homeschool, but it's actually not like that at all. It's about being confident in what you're doing and who you are, and know that you are doing okay. That doesn't mean a homeschool from just like, let me figure out today what we're doing today. Still make a plan and still follow the plan, follow through to the best of your ability, but understand that, you know, not every day is gonna go exactly as planned, but just be confident in knowing that what you're doing is good. Constantly try to better yourself, reach out to people for help, but just be comfortable and know and have faith that what you're doing is good. The author, Sarah Mackenzie, is Christian, I believe, and so the book is has like a biblical undertone in there. And if you're comfortable reading that as a secular homeschooler, then by all means read it. But if you are not comfortable reading something that has like a lot of Bible passages in there or references to God, then steer clear of that book. But I thought overall the message was pretty much, you know, have a plan, try to stick to it, but have confidence and have faith that you are doing the best that you can and you're providing the best education for your child that you can. The second book that I read was All the Light We Cannot See, and that book was great. There have only been a couple of books in my life that have made me cry. That was added to the list. It was also one of those books where I just knew the outcome. I knew what was going to happen, and it didn't. And I was like, wait, I usually know what's gonna happen, and it didn't happen. So this is a historical fiction, World War II, and it has one main character as a blind girl in Paris, and another is a German soldier who is, all over Europe at some point, but he ends up being in Paris too, and in France. And it's basically like their perceptions of, you know, how, or their vantage points of the war as a German soldier, and then her as, you know, being her experience during that time in the war. And I really enjoyed it, really thought it was a great book, and I love historical fiction, and it's definitely one of my all-time favorites. I read The Nightingale, which is also very similar, and that was the other book that has made me cry. And Beneath the Scarlet Sky was also similar, but I think the writing was a little bit not as good as All the Light We Cannot See and The Nightingale. So if you are interested in historical fiction, those are 2 other books that I've read that are related to All the Light We Cannot See. The third book that I read it's a young adult book, but it's Fish in a Tree. And it's one of those books where I feel like if you are educating children in any capacity, that is a book that you should read. It's about a girl who has dyslexia, but has somehow gone undetected. And I think she is somewhere around 12 or in the 5th grade or something like that. And she finally has a teacher who is like, I'm going to help you. And so it kind of goes from the beginning where she has, you know, teachers like, oh, why are you always causing trouble? Why don't you just do the work? to at the end, you know, she figures out what the issue is, that she can fix it. And it's just, you know, the relationship between the teacher and the student who is struggling. And I just thought it was a very beautiful book. And it also highlights that not everyone learns the same. And we can't expect everyone to learn the same way. And I think it was Albert Einstein who said something along the lines of, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, then it'll go its whole life thinking that it's stupid. So it was Fish in the Tree is one of those books that is a great reminder that you can't judge every single child by the same measure. Some people learn differently, some people can produce things differently, and you need to take that into account when teaching children. So I just feel like that book is a great book for any person who is educating children in some way, whether it be coaching or teaching, homeschooling, anything. The next book that I read was An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. And that book was a really good book. I could not put that one down. And that was one where every day when my husband came home from work, I was like, listen to what happened. And I just talked him through the entire book, and we had a lot of discussions about it, and he would tell me like what he thinks was going to happen next. And so it's about a Black couple in America, and the marriage is okay. There is, I think, some infidelity at the beginning, but he's like, I love you the most, you know, and she's like, let's make this work. So they end up going to Louisiana, a very small town, Louisiana, and to visit his parents, and they stay in a hotel, and he ends up being accused of rape, and he goes to court, the husband, and he becomes convicted of the crime, even though he didn't do it, and he spends time in prison. So and she's like, I'm not going to leave you, I'm going to stay with you. So it's the whole relationship going through there. So you see the before, during prison, and then after. And it really made me think about, number one, the prison system in America, number two, just the relationship and what distance can do in a relationship. And, you know, since my husband is military, we sometimes go through that as well. And it also made me think about our justice system in America. And there was just so much to unpack with that book. So, I mean, every day my husband and I were having conversations about it, and he did not read it, but I told him everything that happened, and it was just, we had some really good conversations coming from that book. So I definitely suggest that to anyone. And the last one I read actually popped up on my Goodreads when I was reading Fish in a Tree. It said, if you like this, you might like this. And it was Stella by Starlight. That one was by Sharon Draper. And it's a young adult book, and I think that it was a great read. I went back and forth on trying to think if I wanted my 7-year-old to read it. I think I'm gonna wait a little bit on that. Maybe when we're studying that era, then I'll probably have him read it. So it's about Stella and her little brother Jojo. They live in a small town in one of the Carolinas, and I can't think of which one. So it's the 1930s, and there's the black side of town and the white side of town. And you know, it kind of follows them going to school and just the interactions in the town. They end up seeing the KKK there. And the whole town is in uproar. Well, the black side of town is in uproar because there's like, why are they here? What do they want? What are they doing? And so Stella, the main character of the book, recognizes like the dragon master, the KKK, and knows who it is in town. And they have no way of like outing them, because what does it matter? You know, they are just gonna keep doing what they do anyway. So it's election season, and Stella's dad and the pastor in their town and some other people really want to vote. They want to make their voices heard. They are put through like 45-minute written test, whereas like white people come in and they're able to just sign their name and their date of birth and like, okay, you're registered to vote. And they're having to write the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and know certain amendments and all the stuff that really happened. and they end up passing and were able to vote, but of course not without any kind of a backlash. So, you know, someone's house gets burned down by the KKK, and it's really interesting. I think for me, the ending, I would have liked the ending to be a little bit different, or maybe a little bit more, but I felt like the overall story was good, and it's a great book for kids to be reminded that, you know, life wasn't always like it is now. There were times where things were separate and definitely not equal, and just, you know, kind of how that was. It was less than 100 years ago that, you know, something like that took place. So those are the books that we read from mid-August to today. What books have you read over the past month that really had you excited, or maybe they were just a little lackluster and you didn't like them? Share them down below. I love seeing different books and adding books to my Goodreads list. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.